hosted by Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam and supported by Hong Kong Trade Development Council. We have a total participants of over 300, and we will update you a little bit later when I have the final number. My name is Winnie Lam. I'm the General Secretary to the Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam and the COO of Colliers in Vietnam, and I will take you through the presentation today. I would like to start by thanking our sponsor, GoNP Capital, and our co-organizer, KPMG Vietnam, with the representative speakers, Mr. Chang Hong Chun, Audit Partner, Chinese Practice Leader, and Ms. Mia Terblay, Associate Director, Real Estate Service, and our guest speaker, Mr. Win Ming Guan, Head of Product Marketing, Samsung Mobile Vietnam. And not the least, Mr. Frederick Burke, Senior Partner, Bacon & McKenzie Vietnam, who will moderate the Q&A session. It is my honor to be hosting you. Thank you. Besides the organizers and speaker organizations, we have a total of 20 national and regional organizations events today, and it is evident the topic is of great interest. Allow me a few moments to thank all of them. From region, Hong Kong Australia Business Association, Hong Kong Development Council, Hong Kong Singapore Business Association, Indonesia Hong Kong Business Association, Myanmar Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Thai Hong Kong Trade Association. And in Hong Kong, the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce Hong Kong, Hong Kong Vietnam Chamber of Commerce, and the Junior Chamber International's Asian Pacific Development Council. And in Vietnam, AmCham, AustCham, BRICHam, CanCham, the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, the Council of Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, the Italian Chamber of Commerce, the Indian Business Chambers, Malaysia Business Chambers Vietnam, and the Singapore Business Group. Thank you very much for your support. Today's events consist of 3 short presentations and a panel discussion to follow where you can raise questions throughout the webinars. For good housekeeping, the host has muted all your microphones and videos to ensure focus. You can send your questions in during the event and we will try to get to all of them. And if we cannot get to them, we will get to them after the event. If you're encountering any technical problem, the first thing to do, we recommend is log out and log in again, and that should solve most of the problem. Let me quickly get Mr. Chang, Audit Partner, Chinese Practice Leader, to kick off the event. Mr. Chang currently is the partner of KPMG Vietnam and used to work for KPMG Malaysia. His professional services experience includes financial statement audit, tax audit, and project audit as part of the audit services, counseling planning, including the implementation of operational assessment, organizational planning, system establishment related to IPO application, as well as service audit service for multinational companies in Vietnam. His presentation today is on emerging electronics investment opportunities in Vietnam. Without further delay, I'm handing over the microphone to Mr. Chang. Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Okay, thanks Vinny for the introductions, and thanks Hong Kong Business Association and Go Capital for inviting me to talk about the investment environment in Vietnam, in particular in respect of the electronic manufacturing sectors. So for all the audience joining the webinar today, a very good morning to everyone. Thanks for taking your time to join this webinar, and thanks for your interest in investing into Vietnam market as a source for manufacturing. The topic that I'm going to cover this morning is the electronic manufacturing landscape in Vietnam. The world is changing. The manufacturing footprint of the world is changing. So Vietnam's role in this end is growing. And I'm delighted to have this conversation with you in regards to how China, as the factory of the world, is looking into Vietnam to bring Vietnam into the fold of the manufacturing. So today, we are going to zoom in into the electronic manufacturing sector in Vietnam. Vietnam is growing in this space as in many other spaces. Over the next few slides, we will talk about how Vietnam rank among other Southeast Asia countries in terms of manufacturing environment on a macro level. We will also zoom into the Vietnam business environment with some statistics about doing business in Vietnam. And then we will look into the export-oriented manufacturing of Vietnam, a story that will sound very familiar to a lot of participants from China on this call today. Okay, let's first look at Vietnam as an industry and compare Vietnam's manufacturing environment with other Southeast Asian countries. We can see that Vietnam is growing very fast as an economy, and in fact, Vietnam is one of the fastest growing economy in the world in the past few years. You can see that Vietnam's average GDP from 2014 to 2019 is at around 7.1%, which is significantly higher than Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. You will notice that we purposely compare these statistics prior to COVID because the number after COVID might be quite distorted. Having said that, thanks to the effective measure and controls taken by the Vietnamese government in containing COVID-19, Vietnam is one of the few countries in Asia that not deep into the recession territory for economic growth. We still in 2020 recorded a positive GDP growth of 2.9%. We think that as the Vietnam economy is not badly affected by COVID as compared to other countries, Vietnam will have a stronger recovery post-COVID. Manufacturing costs, for example, the minimum wages and construction costs are a few statistics that we will go into more detail when we look at the business environment in Vietnam. However, in here, I would like to do a direct comparison between Vietnam and Thailand, which I have highlighted these two countries in red boxes because so often in the electronic manufacturing space, these two countries are set in the same breath. Much of the world's chips, camera equipment, laptop are originated or have parts and components from these two countries. So it's only fitting for us to compare them directly. You can see that the Vietnam minimum wages and construction costs is lower than Thailand by about 20 to 40%. That said, the output per employee in Vietnam is a lot more lower than Thailand, meaning the productivity on a per employee basis is below Thailand. But Vietnam has one of the fastest growing productivity rate among Southeast Asia at 6.3% per annum pre-COVID. Now, I personally think that the number will accelerate tremendously in a post-COVID world where automation and industrialization continue to expand in Vietnam. Okay, we all know that Asia is one of the most globally integrated regions with a high number of existing and upcoming multilateral FTAs as part of globalization. So how is Vietnam setting up its globalization as compared to other Southeast Asia countries? We all know that China's growth as economic power stems from a few key milestones, in which one of the most important milestones is the joining of the WTO in 2001. Vietnam is part of the WTO, but it also signed a lot of bilateral agreements with different countries and regions. And here are some of the examples. On the right side, it shows the history of the FTA that Vietnam has signed until 2020, and there are around 13 of them. On the left side, we compare the FTAs that Vietnam has signed with other Southeast Asian countries. You will notice that Vietnam is not only the two countries in Southeast Asia, which the other one is Malaysia, that have signed the CPTPP in 2018, but with the conclusion of the EU-Vietnam FTA, or we call it IFTA, last year in 2020, Vietnam is the only Southeast Asia country that have a free trade agreement with EU, linking Vietnam with its counterpart in Europe. IFTA is a significant milestone for Vietnam because based on the trading term in the IFTA agreement, upon entering into the agreement, EU will eliminate the import duty of about 85.6% of tariff line for product from Vietnam and remove import duty of 99.2% of tariff line within the next 7 years. This will give competitive advantages to Vietnam's manufacturer as compared to other Southeast Asia countries in terms of export orientation to EU. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit on the business environment in Vietnam. What is this like to do business in Vietnam? Let's first look at few key statistics here. First, about the labor force in Vietnam. Vietnam has a huge population of about 97 million population. And Vietnam also has one of the largest labor force per share of population in Southeast Asia at about 59%. This is owing to a relatively young age of population. Now, again, I keep coming back to the analogy of China. If you look at the history of the Chinese economy, the development of China accelerated rapidly in 1990 because China has a large employable base of workers ready to work in the factory. And that is what Vietnam is now. Real GDP growth, as I've mentioned, is around 7%. Although last year GDP was about 2.9%, we expect a quick recovery post-COVID. Based on the half-year result that was just being announced by the Vietnamese government, Vietnam GDP for the first 6 months of 2021 hit 5.64% and is on course to meet the forecasted 6.9% GDP growth this year. Political risk. So Vietnam is very much like China. It's a one-party state, and therefore the political situation in Vietnam is stable. For the ease of doing business, the Vietnamese government has continued its reform by continuously cutting down red tape in its administration to improve efficiency. And I would say that the ease of doing business in Vietnam now is comparable to other countries. This has transformed to the overall competitiveness of Vietnam, and Vietnam has continued to improve in this space with an improved ranking every year. Okay, let's continue to look at other statistics. In terms of corporate income tax, Vietnam current CIT rate is 20%, which is similar to Thailand, but is lower than other Southeast Asia countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. The Vietnamese government also continue to provide attractive tax incentives to attract foreign direct investment into Vietnam. For example, manufacturing companies setting up their factory in industrial zone which are located in urban district of cities will be entitled to enjoy a 2 years exemptions and a 4 years 50% reduction as standard tax rate. Furthermore, if company can meet certain conditions, they can even enjoy up to a CIT rate of 10% for 15 years, for the first 15 years, and a further 4 years exemptions and 9 years 50% reduction, which is a very, very good incentive as compared to other countries. Some example of condition to enjoy this incentive is if you set up your investment project in high-tech zone and or economic zone, project in specially difficult locations specified by the government, or the project is involved in the high-tech product or use high-tech technology, which is approved by the Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam, or if your investment capital exceeded certain threshold, for example, 6,000 billion VND, which is equivalent to about 250 million US dollar. A lot of the electronic companies are currently actually looking into this space to try to maximize their tax incentive. Logistic performance is good at 3.27 over 5 and ranked 39 in world for logistic. However, the infrastructure aspect, especially on the road and the port quality, is not scoring high, and there's still a lot of room for improvement in this area. But the situation is improving, I have to say that. As the government, as the Vietnamese government is investing in road and the development of the North-South Highway, the railway, the extension of ports and other critical infrastructure that will be important for not only living in Vietnam, but conducting business and helping the export from Vietnam. Okay, wages are which are critical factors for manufacturing company that are labor intensive is competitive in Vietnam, as I've mentioned earlier. Vietnam has one of the lowest wages for manufacturing in Southeast Asia, although we do see a trend of continuous increase in the labor cost in recent years due to the mass inward migration of FDI into Vietnam. The average annual leave of 13 days per annum is considered low as compared to other Southeast Asia countries, which is good for manufacturing company. The labor tax and contribution is around 25%, which is comparable to other Southeast Asian countries. Now, if you look at the utility cost, i.e. the electricity cost, Vietnam electricity cost of 7 cents per kilowatt is considerably lower as compared to other Southeast Asian countries, and similarly for the cost of water and gasoline. Okay, let's take a few minutes to look at the export-oriented manufacturing in Vietnam and how is this being played out in the electronic manufacturing sectors. Vietnam is developing two main clusters of export-oriented manufacturing for electronic sectors, one in the north and one in the south. The north is dominated by Samsung, Foxconn, LG, and other Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers like Pegatron, Jotech, and Jotech. In the south, we have Intel and Toshiba, which manufacture their products for export. I will not cover the in-depth on the manufacturing environment in the north and in the south, as my colleague will actually cover that part later. But in general, Vietnam now has more than 2,000 international manufacturers based in Vietnam in the electronic space, employing more than 600 employees. And last year, Vietnam has also attracted over 30 billion FDI investment in the electronic manufacturing sectors. So where are those companies coming from? So a lot of them are actually moving their manufacturing here from China. This obviously accelerated during the Trump's administration, but has continued the trend until now, as we see that the cost of living and cost of manufacturing is increasing in other countries, especially in China. And with the favorable investment condition in Vietnam, as we have actually discussed, the acceleration of manufacturing company moving into Vietnam is understandable. Here are some of the key examples. Inventec and Pegatron, which are the key manufacturing supplier of iPhone component, is moving to Vietnam. TCL, which manufactures TV for export, has moved into Vietnam. Apple has also set up a factory in the north to manufacture AirPods, and with rumors that they are going to further extend their footprint in Vietnam. And Microsoft manufactures its laptop and computer here in Vietnam. Interestingly, we are even seeing some movement from other Southeast Asian countries into Vietnam, namely Thailand. So Panasonic has recently moved its Thai footprint into Vietnam, which in our view is cementing the position of Vietnam as one of, if not the main Southeast Asia manufacturing hub for electronics. Okay, very quickly here, I would like to actually highlight in these slides the composition of trade over times for Vietnam. This is a story that you can tell for Vietnam as you can tell for China. So looking back to 2008, the electronic manufacturing has a value of 8.7 billion of export revenue. And although it was ranked second in terms of export, it only represented 11% of the total export. Now, fast forward 10 years, in 2018, you can see that the value grew by 32% compounded annually, and the value of the electronic manufacturing export now is standing at 113 billion, and now not only ranked first in terms of export, but also made up of 47.4% of the total export value. This has further proven that the Vietnamese government has successfully transformed the country from agricultural and traditional product-based manufacturing to the more high-end electronic-based manufacturing. And Vietnam is emerging to be the next manufacturing hub for a lot of international players in the electronic sectors. By this, I will end my presentation here, and I look forward to more interaction during the Q&A. Thank you.
Introductions to the landscape. Coming up next, we have Ms. Mier, who was a colleague of mine at Colliers Vietnam before, now with KPMG Vietnam, M&A Real Estate Division as Associate Director. She has already worked for KPMG Shanghai Audit Department back in 2006. And after that, she was Business and Project Manager of Gwen Design, in which she was responsible for project design and project management. She had over 10 years of experience in real estate, M&A, architecture consulting, and capital management, among others. She will walk us through the real estate landscape for electronics industry in Vietnam today. Handing it over to you, Mier.
Okay, now, so overall, Vietnam has 4 key sectors of electronic manufacturing: computer hardware, components and parts, communications, and audiovisual. In each sector, we have some big players already joined, as shown here: Canon, Samsung, LG, Panasonic, Intel, and especially notable names like the 4 of the biggest partners of Apple: Foxconn, Compal, Pegatron, and Lexshare, manufacturing and assembling components and parts for Apple's products. So here, the 2 sectors have the highest presence of electronic multiple national companies are computer hardwares and components and parts. So with Vietnam still remaining as the attractive destination for multiple national players, we will see that northern economic zones will continue to be the manufacturing hub for players in electronic industry. So why did these companies choose to set up factories in the north instead of moving to the south, which is the largest key economic region of Vietnam? First of all, in terms of location, compared to the south, the north is very close to China, South Korea, and Japan, which is convenient for supply chain, attracting investment capital and trade. Secondly, the north has more highways, so 14 roads with a total length of 2,300 kilometers, while in the south, there are 10 roads with the length of 1,260 kilometers. Thirdly, northern key economic zone has more young and well-trained cheap labor. For the cost in the north, average cost is about $287 per month, while it is $325 a month in the south. Well, in terms of the rental costs, for the warehouse, it's similar the same. Well, for one-time investment for the land rental lease for per lease terms, in the North IP, is lower as it is $107 per square meter per lease term, while it is 111 square meter per square meter per lease term in the south, according to the JL report. Also, for occupancy rate now in the north, it is 75%, which implies for more space for new players to enter, comparing to the high occupancy rate above 86% in the south already. So basically, the north is focusing on attracting foreign direct investment from new technology industries, orienting the development of electronics industries. Okay, so following these highlights above, it's easy to understand that over past years, many large capital investments of electronics players have been made into the IPs of northern Vietnam. Samsung, with its $15.4 billion investment into 3 factories in the north, is one of the highlight mega investment in Vietnam. LG also poured over $4.55 billion to build factories in the north. Foxconn, Taiwanese well-known manufacturer, also has previously invested in the north of $1.5 billion, and also recently announced its next investment in Bac Giang at the beginning of this year. So for this, we will go over more details later. So almost 65% existing manufacturer players in the sector of electronics have locations in the north, while remaining 35 chosen to relocate in the south. Well, northern economic zones will become the electronics hub. Today, we will introduce 5 of the main provinces that attracts most of the players and will continue to attract more in the field. So first of all, let's look at the 2 biggest provinces there, Haiphong and Bac Ninh. Haiphong has 12 IP with total area of about 4,400 hectares. The majority of the electronic MNCs are located in Dinh Phu, Cat High Economic Zone, which has 9 IPs inside. Haiphong has a big advantage of geographical location with 38 seaports. As the 3rd biggest city in Vietnam, Haiphong becomes one of the marine economic centers in the North Sea and the whole country. Also, Haiphong has its own Hkbav International Airport and a newly built modern highway system connecting Haiphong to other provinces and Hanoi. Taking advantage of locating in the economic zone, investors choosing this easy will receive tax incentive in CIT, VAT, and FCT as Vietnam's regulations. So Haiphong has set a target that by 2025, it will invest in 50 new industrial parks and add 6,500 hectares of industrial land to meet the diverse needs of investors in this new period. So also in the next 5 years, the province plans to deploy 4 more phases in the deep sea ports. Let's look at Bac Ninh. So Bac Ninh has 15 industrial parks with total area of 6,847 hectares. The majority of the electronic MNCs are located in Hkbav IP, VSIP Bac Ninh, and the Yam Phong IP. So in terms of location, Bac Ninh is close to Hanoi, Noi Bai International Airport, and Haiphong Port, which is convenient to relocate factory from China to Vietnam through 2 main ways, air and sea. Bac Ninh has the current policy stimulate that the tax incentive period for the investment projects is the absolute period from the time the project comes into operation for tax incentive and from the time taxable income is generated from the investment projects for tax reduction and exemption. As for the future plan, Bac Ninh supports site cleansing and speed up the building of 60 industrial parks that have already been approved. And Bac Ninh will also change direction to attract FDI according to the following 2 less, 3 high. Less land, less labor, high investment rate, high budget contribution, and high technology content. So let's look at other 3 provinces which are relatively small but have great potentials. Bac Giang. Bac Giang has 6 IPs with total area of 1,460 hectares. The majority of the electronic multiple nationals are located in Quang Chau IP and Wan Chuan IP. In terms of location, Bac Giang locates just next to the economic triangle Hanoi, Haiphong, and Quang Ninh, and has a relative convenient transportation system with roads, railways, and rivers, which ensures the convenient connection with Noi Bai International Airport, Gia Lam Domestic Port, Kai Lan Deep Water Port, Haiphong Port, international border gates on Lan Song border, and other provinces in the region. So for the future plan, recently the Prime Minister has agreed to add 3 new industrial zones in Bac Giang province. And in the period of 2026 to 2030, the whole province is planning to invest a big amount in infrastructure works. Well, for Taiwan, so Taiwan has 6 IPs with total area of 1,420 hectares. The majority of the electronics MNCs are located in Yanbing IP, where Samsung has its factory in. So because of Samsung, as this effect of the Queen Bee, Taiwan is highly potential to attract other supplementing high-tech companies to invest in. In terms of location, the travel time from Taiwan to Noi Bai Airport is only 40 minutes. To the center of Hanoi is only 1 hour. So roads and railway systems connecting with other provinces around, with the Dak Phuc River ports connects the province of the Red River Delta. So currently, for the future plan, currently Taiwan has totally 6 IPs with occupancy rate of 61%. Therefore, it implies for more capacity for new players to enter. Also, Taiwan has been approved by the Prime Minister to add Yanbing Central Concentrated Information Technology Park to the general plan of the National Centralized Information Technology Park with an area of over 200 hectares. So also, at the same time, this province is speeding up with many transportation infrastructure projects. So as for Hanam has 8 IPs with total area of 2,000 hectares. The majority of the electronics MNCs are located in Dong Ban IP. In terms of location, so Hanam is located at in the North Key Economic Region and known as the Gateway of Hanoi, with the North-South Railway and the 1A National Highways crossover. Hanam has favorable conditions for electronic exchange and cooperation with other provinces and major economic centers of the country. With the future plan, with a vision to 2030, Hainan prioritized the development of supporting high-tech industries. Also, Hainan focuses on attracting business from developed countries such as Japan, Korea, and Europe. Especially, Dongguan 3 IP was planned to mainly attract Japanese investors. Overall, all these northern provinces try to reform administrative procedure in order to support and create the most favorable conditions for corporations and business to invest. So what's next? Many players in the field are keeping an eye on northern provinces are already implementing their expansion plan in Vietnam. The past few years had witnessed a massive wave of investment in high-tech electronics production bases in Vietnam. There's a domino effect where one player gets the nod, urging others to step into the competition. In 2019, Panasonic Life Solutions Vietnam conducted a groundbreaking ceremony of new factories in VSIP2, Bingzhong manufacturing ceiling fans and ventilators with investment cost being over $45 million. Continuing the trend of the investment towards Vietnam, Pegatron, a Taiwanese contract manufacturer, received approval for a facility project with investment of $90 million in deep sea IP in Haiphong. And in October 2020, there was another groundbreaking ceremony for a factory project of network equipment and audio multimedia products with production capacity of over 381 million products per year, located in WHA Industrial Zones 1 IP in Nha An. The project was Geotech's first move in Vietnam. So Foxconn, one of the most major manufacturer and iPhone manufacturer of iPhone, spent 270 million on a project of laptop and tablet products. The project based in Quang Chau IP, Bắc Giang provinces was accepted very recently, January 2021, in the license with an annual design capacity of 8 million units per year. Also, in 2021, LG Display, in addition to its current factories in Vietnam, plans to invest another 750 million US dollar in its LG Display Haiphong factory, bringing the total project investment capital to 3.25 billion US dollar. So who are coming next? For Pegatron, the first project paved the way for two more in their planning stage. The next project is scheduled to be initiated in 2021 at the cost of 481 million, while the idea of the third one for the period of 2025, 2026, with a budget over 500 US dollar is already formulated. It is also reported that Hkbav and Google are making their moves. Hkbav is opting for Vinh Phuc province as a base to set up a factory manufacturing laptop and smartphone with production capacity of 2 million products per month. Meanwhile, Google is reported to be working on a project in Bắc Ninh province. So for our last topic from my presentation today, my colleagues Chang already covered that for infrastructure and development, to make sure that to make a good use of this opportunity of investment wave coming in requires Vietnam to have specific and appropriate solutions. And the most important solution is infrastructure development. As of right now, transportation infrastructure is a major bottleneck for Vietnam to become a manufacturing hub, as logistic costs accounted for over 20.8% of GDP, as opposite to global average about 13, and are more higher than China's average level of 14.3. One of the largest obstacles is that in Vietnam, the small size tracking fleet, -5 tons, accounted for over 86%. The limitation in the road system is a major reason. Vietnam obtains over 500,000 kilometers of the road, but less than 25% are in good shape. Moreover, express highways only accounted for roughly 4.5%. Thus, the average speed in Vietnam is 35 kilometers per hour, which is way below that of China, at least 55 kilometers per hour. However, the good side of this is there is government commitment on upgrading the infrastructure, which we already see the strong improvement as a positive result, especially in the north. So abandoned budget for public infrastructure spending above 120 billion US dollar allocated for over the next four years, as committed by the party leaders during the Congress meeting occurred recently in 2021. So big ticket transportation infrastructure projects, as we can see on the left side of the slides, are under construction across the Vietnam to increase the speed and unloaded the traffic congestion situation, modernize the road network of Tier 2 and Tier 3 provinces. This infrastructure development will become the key to attract new foreign direct investment in general and electronic manufacturing players in specific. That's my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Diverse expertise in product marketing, category management, shoppers marketing, and sales management. Mr. Quan today will focus on what makes Vietnam a global bright spot in electronics production with focus on mobile market. Now, I also want to remind all the participants, if you have the questions, then you can utilize the chat box to the right bottom corner on your screen where you can put in your questions, and I'm seeing some of them already. So, Kwan, take away. I'm very looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hello. Okay. Uh, it's my pleasure to join the webinar now. Next slide, please. As Mr. Chang and Ms. Mi already go through some very interesting data, so I just jump into some, figures that it make us feel more interesting and some more insight from the manufacturer point of view. So take a quick look about the achievement in terms of export of Vietnam uh, after, the U.S. lifted the trade embargo against Vietnam in 1994. So you can see that, the achievement of Vietnam from over the last 9 years triples versus what we have done from 1986 to 2010. And next slide, please. And specifically for the electronics, Vietnam now we become the top 10 of the largest electronics exporting country global wise. And among the brand, as you already, got the information from me sharing, Samsung, we have over 17.5 billion investment capital into Vietnam, and it is expected that we will expand the investment in the country for longer run as well. And at the same time, besides manufacturing, Samsung also invests in the research and development center in Hanoi. It's about to open in 2023. I mean, that the next 2 years. And this will be one of the biggest R&D center in Southeast Asia region. And we invest more than 230 million US dollar for this R&D center. And talk about the mobile device export in the last year. So total Vietnam, we export around 29 billion USD, and then 58% of that go to US and EU. And Samsung contribute 90% of that export amount, and it is around 26 billion. And this also makes Samsung, Vietnam, become the second largest exporter of smartphone in the world. And you know what? With the factory in Bắc Ninh and Thái Nguyên now, employ more than 160,000 local workers. And this is also one of the biggest factory of Samsung in the world. Next slide, please. Okay, this is some figures that can give you some food for thought about the electronics. So we have two main parts. The first about the mobile device and component. The second thing is about the general electronic devices and the and PC and components. So over the last 10 years, total electronic device export, grow 16 times versus 2010, and the contribution of total electronics, just coming from just 8%, very small number in 2010, and now it become 34.7% portion, contribution. So it even higher than the textile and garment export value. So about the growth rate, you see that the total electronics export maintain a very sustainable growth rate over the years, and I do believe that is still keep growing in the next few years. And the reason why, come to the next slide. So let's talk about what make Vietnam that achieve that kind of achievement so far. I separate into external factors and internal factors. So let's talk about external factor. The first about the world trade between US and China, as you already know, according to Asia Development Bank, in 2019, the US import from China, dropped 12% in the first 6 months, while from Vietnam increased 33% with electronics and machinery. And then in terms of investment, based on Gartner, that the investment into Vietnam, had increased 200% in the first 7 months in 2019 as well. So that's very good signal that and this kind of trend will keep growing, as you already heard from the sharing of me and Mr. Chang. So next slide, please. Beside the manufacturing part, so I'd like to share a little bit more about the consumer insights. So this is the survey for the global consumer. So they research about the consumer behavior after COVID time, and this research run in June, in last June. So the good signal is that the demand globally after COVID, they are increasing, and is across the the categories like the home entertainment, consumer electronics, and virtual online activities. Why? Because you know that after COVID, everything has changed a lot, especially people nowadays they work at home more frequently. So and they change the behavior in terms of working, entertainment, entertaining, and also learning as well. That's why the categories like home appliances, mobile devices will keep increasing. And for Vietnam, you know what? For Vietnam, for the mobile phone market only, in Vietnam until May 2021, grow 36% versus 2020. And the interesting part is the premium segment. The over 600 USD grow even higher, 98% versus 2020. That means that the demand is still there, even grow higher with the premium segment. So this is very good insight, and it's create the good signal for all of the manufacturers, so they can invest into their manufacturing and also the way they sell the products. And the second thing is about the the channel for shopping. As you can see on the right of the right side, the increasing of online shopping over the last 2 years, a lot, right? But one more interesting thing is the recovery of the in-store purchase. So it means that once the country can control the COVID impact, and the people get vaccinated, so they would like to have more experience in store rather than just shopping online. Next, please. And talk about the internal factors. So I call it the internal boosting factor. As my friend already covered in the previous part. They talk about labor cost, right? And then the FTA, all of the things that make Vietnam more competitive, and also, be more beneficial from the free trade agreement. So I just want to highlight the social political stability in Vietnam. Could be one of the very critical things that we can consider to invest in Vietnam. So next, please. But how about the challenge? We talk a lot about the opportunity. We talk a lot about the the achievement. But how about the challenge for Vietnam? Firstly, let's talk about the production capability and capacity as well. The lack of the know-how and technology, because as you can see on the left side, the localization just now for the electronics device just 5%. Or even some product less than 5%. So it means that there's a huge challenge for local manufacturer who can produce high quality electronics components, and can provide to the global manufacturer like Samsung or other players. And the second challenge that Vietnam will face is about the high quality labor force. Based on the survey of CTCI, Vietnam ranked 87 among 119 countries. You know what? So it means that the quality of the labor force, the talent. That is one of the challenge that Vietnam will face. And the last thing is about the green growth strategy. So the Vietnam green growth strategy focus on three priorities: climate change mitigation, green production, and green lifestyle. And I think that this is the unavoidable trend that all of the players need to focus on. And from Samsung side, we also, focus on the how to use the, renewable energy in our production. We try to reduce, the plastic level in all of the electronics device, and use more environmental friendly components in the home of appliances. So I think I done for my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. And to the audience, we apologize for the technical issues that we encounter from time to time. It is not just easy to have a webinars of this level when everyone's internet bandwidth is being challenged. Without further delay, we now bring the speakers live to the panel discussion. Joining Mr. Chang, Mir, and Mr. Kwan, it is our honor to have Mr. Fred Burke to join our Q&A. Fred is a senior partner of Baker McKenzie based in Vietnam. He has more than 30 years experience practicing in the areas of renewable energy, project finance, foreign investments and securities, international trade, real estate, taxation and customs, and pretty much everything else. You may send your questions through the panels as again set on the bottom right corner of your screen. And then we will go ahead with that. Fred, I hand over the control to you. And speakers, please mute your microphone until it is your time to speak. Otherwise, we will have too much feedback. All right. So, Fred, over to you.
Okay, thanks. And those were three extremely informative presentations. There are a lot of questions in the chat box, but I have a few I'd like to lead off with, if I may. Just to go back to Chang, since you were the first one to speak and you've had the longest time to recover, could we ask about the tax incentives? There's a lot of questions about that. One of the biggest concerns about tax incentives is how they seem to change over time. Sorry, this is for Chang. I don't know if Chang is on there. Chang, can you hear me? Chang, are you there? No, it looks like you're still muted. So why don't you come off mute? In fact, frankly speaking, I think it's better if all the panelists go off mute so we can see your video and your audio. I don't think it's gonna. I think that's the better of the two alternatives because it takes so long to boot up if you come off. So please unmute yourselves if you're a panelist. Thanks. So Chang, back to you.
Yeah.
Tax
Sorry,
incentives.
I think my internet connections was a bit weak just now. So I hope that everyone can hear me now. Yeah. Okay. So
Great.
I think
No,
talking about the tax incentive, as I've actually mentioned in my presentation. So I think the Vietnamese government actually have laid out a lot of good incentives for all the FDIs that actually coming into Vietnam. And I saw in one of the questions that being asked in the chat box is about whether there's any differentiation on the tax incentive in the north or in the south. So I think in general that there is no differentiation on the tax incentive provided by the governments, whether is it in the north or in the south. Because I think in Vietnam, the tax incentives are actually being centralized and organized in the central government. Okay, so I think all the tax incentives that they actually provide is either based on the type of industry, like I've actually mentioned, let's say you're in the high-tech industry or using the high-tech way of manufacturing your products, then you can actually enjoy that. The other,
but since we're talking about land, I mean, isn't the land subject to local level approval in terms of, they can give a sweetheart deal sometimes to a big, attractive high-tech company that would be lower than the normal land price in an industrial zone. Is that a factor?
Okay, I'm not quite familiar with the land price. I'm just talking about the tax incentive provided by the
income
government.
tax.
I think for the land price, maybe later Mayor can actually jump in and mention a bit. But I think again from the tax incentive perspective, the other type of incentive that companies can actually enjoy is based on location, right? So I mean, like I mentioned, the Vietnamese government have actually designated certain economic zone or high-tech zone that will actually encourage all the companies to actually locate their manufacturing base there. Right? So let's say you're located in the economic zone, they have some in the north, they have some in the south. Then you can actually enjoy a better incentive.
That's the safest way.
So let's say the investment side is actually bigger than certain threshold, then you can also enjoy a very good incentive. So I mean, a lot of the big players decided to actually invest in Vietnam with a huge investment capital. They can all qualify to actually enjoy the incentive.
Yeah, you can imagine Samsung with $17 billion in investment. It should be some good incentives for that. However, it does seem there's a lot of cases of tax disputes where the investor grows, they change location, they go beyond their initial scope of work, and their license changes, and then somehow they lose their incentives. We see a lot of cases like that. How do you advise your clients to avoid those kind of tax disputes?
Okay, to get a very good tax consultant like KPMG.
First step.
I'm just joking. So, but I think from my perspective, I think the tax regulation in Vietnam is very complicated. I mean, it's a growing country, right? I mean, Vietnamese government is still learning a lot from other country. So, but I mean, for my 17 years here in Vietnam, I mean, I will have to actually say that they actually do improve by a lot already, although there are still some gray area. So, but I think for my advice for the investor is that if you are not very familiar with the tax regulation in Vietnam, really you have to actually get a good consultant to actually advise you, because the location that you select to actually do your manufacturing, the type of product that you actually manufacture, or how you actually manufacture that, will all have an impact on the kind of incentive that you can actually enjoy. And recently, I mean, the Vietnamese government even actually come up with a supporting industrial incentive. So let's say your products are part of the supporting industry kind of product, then you can actually enjoy a better incentive. Whether you can actually qualify for that or not, of course, you have to actually meet a lot of criteria, right? So, which again, I say, if let's say you do some initial investment in trying to actually study about the incentive provided by the government, and try to actually see whether you can align your investment to achieve that, then I think that will be a very good strategy, because once you started that, follow with you, right? I mean, let's say you don't have a good starting place, and then you get it wrong, then I think it's very difficult to actually change at the later part.
Yeah. Have you any investors concerned about potential anti-dumping or countervailing duties cases when they're talking about all these incentives? I mean, if you're having a lower than market price of gas and water and 7 kilowatt cents an hour for the public grid electricity, which may be actually more, there are forces at work in the U.S. and in Europe that would like to see countervailing duties on some of that to so-called level the playing field. Is that, and when such a big portion of these exports are going to those two markets still, is that a concern?
I would say that it's going to be a concern later in the future, maybe not at this moment. I mean, we can hear that there are some industry like the steel industry that the US government is actually looking into it and to see whether there's any anti-dumping violation. But I mean, in general, from my perspective, let's say talking about the US now, I think although before that with the Trump administration, so it's an issue with the Chinese government, right? So I think that they will still continue to actually have that sensitive relationship or discussion with the Chinese. So I don't think that at this moment that they will be heavily focusing on Vietnam. But you are right. I mean, it's an area that all the players have to be taking note on, because going forward, definitely, I think that will be an area that that will be a concern for the manufacturer here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Mir, we were referred back to you for the issue of some of these real estate issues. How do you see that in terms of the pricing of land? Is pricing of land going to be going up a lot for these investors, or is it?
So that's a very good and tricky question, which I've been asked by my potential investors, like especially in this COVID period. People like international investors, they are really expecting a depression on the cost, but unluckily that is not really what's happening in Vietnam. Even considering government is pushing really forward for extending the industrial land banks, but as you can see, especially in the south, the occupancy rate of the industrial parks it's above 86%. Well, in the north, when we have more available land banks, we still already reach above 75%, which 68%, sorry, but which for new industrial hub, which have been really open its gate for the last 5 years, is a very fast development. So I would say we are still waiting for the pandemic situation. Once it's more clear, we have more site visits when the commercial flights are open, then more investment will flow in. We can see an upside of land appreciation again in the future.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think we can talk about other ways in which COVID has impacted these operations. Maybe we can come to Quan for that. I mean, with you said 160,000 local workers, what's been the vaccination strategy for keeping those people healthy and safe?
Yeah. Protecting, all of the workers is one of the top priority from Samsung. That's why, 3 weeks ago, we already get 100% of the workers get vaccinated. so that we can maintain the manufacturing and also this kind of a policy to apply to all of the employees, not only from the manufacturing side, but for the sales and marketing and the supporting function as well. So we would like to make sure that from Samsung side we can control and keep everything balanced until the country can control the COVID wave.
Fantastic. No, that's really interesting that you were able to get 100% done 3 weeks ago. That's congratulations. That's really an achievement, and I think it shows that the government has really got the idea now that they have to do everything possible to stop any disruption to the supply chain, so that the whole business doesn't fall apart in the future. I mean, it's as Mir said before, we're already having enough trouble with infrastructure, getting a container box out of the port. Not so easy. Last thing we need is people on sick leave, unable to provide the ancillary services and logistics and support that you need to get your goods to market and get them made here. So great to hear that the government's taking it so seriously that they could do 160,000 doses like that. That's really good news. You also mentioned your green growth strategy. That's a very interesting thing that we're seeing a lot of too in terms of renewable energy for electronics projects, especially in consumer area. What we see is consumers want to know that they're not going to destroy the planet by buying a electronic device from another. So there's a lot of marketing and that kind of investment that's going into the green supply chain. And Vietnam's been fantastically successful on the solar rooftop side, where there's 20% plus of the national installed capacity is now coming from solar, and it was nothing maybe 6 years ago. So that's been a big success. Now looking to more wind power in the next power development plan. What are your specific kind of interests in terms of greening the supply chain for yourself? Is it more on wind, solar, deep PPAs, or solar, or what's your interest?
Okay, from Samsung side, for the global scale, we just signed cooperation with one of the largest solar modules manufacturer, SEQ Cells, so that Samsung can apply smart things energy service to our home appliances device now. So it means that the homeowner now, they can produce and store their own energy at their house, and then they can monitor and automatically optimize energy consumption in their home appliances and heating system. And that's it's just a starting point. And at the same time, Samsung, we will announce soon the commitment for the sustainable growth, sustainability to the planet as well. With the green production, and also we use the environmental friendly material, especially we reduce plastic in our every single electronic devices.
That's interesting. You mentioned that before. I meant to ask. There's a new environmental protection law in Vietnam, which is going to have a lot of impacts in different areas, and one of them is circular economy and reusing the plastics and things that go into all these electronic products. Have you been looking at that? Is that going to increase costs, or is it a good thing actually because it's going to make things more efficient? What do you think?
I think that in short term it can increase the cost, but if we can but we can look in another perspective. It's kind of investment, because that will be the investment for long-term growth, for a more sustainable growth. And as you mentioned earlier, based on our research with the consumer, now top three, among the Gen Z and millennials, top three key buying factors is about the sustainable growth, about the responsibility for the planet, responsibility for the community. And for sure, as a market leader, Samsung cannot, stand aside. We need to, be part of that, and we should lead the train.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. Before I jump to Mir with a question about location, I want to ask you one question about the idea that Samsung, with such a big investment in Vietnam, is like the queen bee, and there's a lot of suppliers coming up. What could the government do to make it easier for these smaller enterprises to get in here to help localize more of the value chain? We've seen in our own work, small companies sometimes have trouble with the red tape and the bureaucracy of Vietnam. They don't get necessarily first priority or tax incentives. So how do you try to support them to make it, to facilitate that? And also what could we ask the government to do for its part to facilitate that onshoring of the value chain?
From Samsung side, we did cooperate with the government, and then we hold some kind of the training center. So we can, offer some kind of technology knowledge and some kind of the skill set to improve the quality of the labor, and also some, but it's quite, it will take lots of time to improve. Yep.
But it sounds like you're confident that it's going to happen, and it's happening already because of the huge investment you've made and success in the market.
Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah.
Yep.
So Mir, let's jump to you. There's a question in the chat box about what about Da Nang as a place to go and invest. It's on the map we saw earlier. It was all concentrated in the north and south, but
Yes.
Da Nang's a sizable city, and it's got great infrastructure, and it's got smart population. There's a lot of IT stuff going on there. What do you think about Da Nang as the next phase?
Yeah, so that's a very good question as well. So actually recently, if you follow the news, the Prime Minister has agreed to allow Da Nang to plant 59 hectares of ancillary IP to support the IT park Da Nang, which is and Da Nang High Tech Park, which is two major IT parks we know very well. So Da Nang has always positioned it and has this public name as this planning to be the Silicon Valley of Vietnam. So that could also, we know that we do have some high tech and IT company put their headquarters in Da Nang instead of south in Ho Chi Minh, not only for the consideration of the cost, but also for the good incentive and the government policy they receive in that region. So but limited to the population or the international hub center, not like south or north. So big players still prefer to center for consideration of the recruitment, the land size. So we do see because each investor had their own priority as priority. So we do see this is a good trend in middle of center of Vietnam, including Binh Dinh, like VSIP Binh Dinh. We have 1,000 hectare IP established from last year, September. So Binh Dinh province also have established a very long implementation list of investment with 156 projects, mainly from Korea, which is focused on electronic industrials, mechanical industry, and high-tech agriculture products, as which are the two main area in Binh Dinh, also province is strongly focused on. So we do see overall, if you look at the size of the country, the whole government is intent to upgrade its manufacturing sector from agriculture up to high-tech. So there's good and healthy competition between each province government. They are trying to put up the best policy for tracking movement. So it really depends on the investors to study and to make their own choice.
I like that healthy competition between provinces. We've seen that really result in some good results for our investors in the past. So something to keep in mind. But you mentioned about agriculture land going into industrial land. I remember in the early days of investment in Vietnam back in the 2000s and late 1990s, there was a concern about food security and whether or not there's going to be enough rice grown in Vietnam to feed people here. That I think there's still a lingering concern, although the enthusiasm for the high tech economy is really driving this kind of investment. Do you see? And this is a little bit different from our main focus, but isn't there also a technology element to the agricultural sector that is trying to make it more smart and more efficient and less damaging on the environment and all this kind of things. You know, you see the dragon fruit industry down near Frontier, some other agricultural areas in the country where they're producing more with less and trying to reduce the impact. Do you see that in what your investors are looking at?
And so my focus is really on real estate, but overall for the sector of tech and agriculture, I would say, interesting you mentioned the Fentian, because another day I passed it, I saw the Tainiao collection point of dragon fruits. So, and also we know that for lychee, for instance, because of the big industrial season now for lychee to China, government especially put policy of Vietnam to have entrance approval for lychee traders. So we can see that it, because of its. And also, one interesting data we received is for the pepper. So with the daily cooking, this pepper, the capacity of per square meter land for production in Vietnam is 5 times of India because of technology improvement. So it's Fantastic. Very interesting that first the capacity of the farmers, or say well-trained and the good policy and good organization of Vietnam government is really pushing forward for the agriculture sector. And we do have big, good investors are looking at this sector from M&A perspective. So we see very good upside for tech improvement in agriculture.
That's very, very interesting. I'm just going to hear those examples because, you know, I always thought that Vietnam, one of its strengths was it has a balanced economic portfolio, has tech, but it also has agriculture, also has services like, you know, the hotels and resorts industry that will come back after COVID. And therefore, it's not, if something goes wrong in one sector, there's more that the economy can go back on. So it's very good for all of us in the Vietnamese economy because it makes it more stable and somehow more prosperous. So I think that we're up on time, and there seems to be no more burning questions. And there's more from the chat box. We might have to get back to these chat box questions later because I'm afraid we're out of time, aren't we, Winnie? Winnie, you have to come off of mute. Okay, there she goes. Okay, we can hear you. We should be able to hear you. Okay. Anybody? Well, do any of our panelists have anything they'd like to jump in and you know, just to make sure we cover things that you want to make covered? Any of you guys have any you know, just last minute remarks? You've been a great panel, very interesting. So impressed with what Samsung has done, and $17 billion of investment, 160,000 vaccinations. It's just an amazing story. And then this agricultural bit at the end, I remember, you know, it used to be you fly into Saigon at night and it was all dark in the surrounding areas. Now there's all these lights for growing the dragon fruits at night, but in the daytime you also see solar panels on top of small factories. And it's all going very well. Of course, there's, you know, trade disputes in the you know, area. We have to watch out for those. And there's things the government could do to streamline investment and make it more, you know, the tax incentives more reliable and predictable and transparent. But those are the normal things that happen in a growing economy like this. So thank you all for your great comments and for participating in today's panel. Okay, Winnie, over to you. Oh, getting some, wait a minute, last minute news. Okay, do you think the government is acting slowly on vaccine policies? A week ago, I would have said yes, and but in that last week, I think the crisis has become apparent to everybody. What happens if this new Delta variant, you know, gets into the population, which it has to some extent. So I think all systems are go now for a mass vaccination from getting vaccines from various sources and approving them at the MOH. You know, we're seeing a lot of our IZ clients in the same position as Samsung, not necessarily having to be so big. I talked to one guy who was only 800 workers, in an IZ outside Ho Chi Minh City. He said all of the factories in the IZ, including the management, no discrimination as between foreigners and locals. Everybody's getting the vaccine there. They were using the AstraZeneca vaccine that was coming from Japan, 850,000 doses there. But there's millions of doses coming in. It's just a matter of time. The government's now saying that they should have everybody, or at least herd immunity by the end of the calendar year. I would hope that really with the kind of, power that the Vietnamese government can do when they get excited about something and really put their minds to it, it could happen a lot sooner than that. So fingers crossed, let's all do our bit. Okay, Winnie, back to you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, panelists. This is a very comprehensive session. Unfortunately, as always, all good things needs to come to an end. And I can see a lot of interaction on the chat panels with questions being asked and answers being provided. A video of this webinar will be available in the next 48 hours on the websites of Hong Kong Business Association, Gore Capital, and KPMG. And the slides will be available to our participants at a later time also. A great thank you to Mr. Chang, Mir, Mr. Kwan, and Fred Burke for sharing your thoughts with us. Fred, if you can mute your microphone, I think we're getting some echoes there. Great, thank you. And a great thank you to the KPMG Vietnam technical team for all the challenges today, and to all the participants on behalf of Hong Kong Business Association, Gore Capital, KPMG Vietnam, and our speakers. Thank you for spending time with us today, and hope that you have enjoyed the event as much as I do. If there is a topic you would like to hear from Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam, or if you are interested in being featured in one of our future webinars, do reach out to us. See you again soon here or in person. And until we meet again, thank you and goodbye.